Have you ever tried to get a group of 3 people to meet consistently for something optional? It doesn't last. Yet Elden Ring Night Rain is forcing players to either play alone or to play in a group of 3. What's the harm in letting people play in a group of 2? It's my personal philosophy that video games, especially in areas where you don't play against other players, should focus on giving the player or players more freedom. As long as you're having fun on your own terms, I don't see the problem in having more options rather than less. In the case of mandatory 3-player sessions, I think there would be actively detrimental consequences to the gameplay. It should go without saying, but just to be clear, for anyone who wants to play with their one best friend or one partner, it's going to be awkward on both ends to tack a third wheel into that party. On top of that, even if you have a pretty equally comfortable friend group, sometimes it's just better to play as a pair. Things come up, people have internet issues, or they just don't feel like playing at that moment. I'm not saying it's the game designer's fault for those things happening, but it's not like they're making anyone's experience better by just not letting them play as a pair instead. For everyone who has just one viable partner at any given time, Night Rain is just not fulfilling the role that it could fill as an entertainment option. So, that's why I think this is a critical mistake for the game. Almost everybody who's heard of this design choice dislikes it. For some people, it's even a deal breaker on whether or not they'll buy the game. But, for the sake of argument, I also wanted to think of some possible justifications for this design choice. First, the mechanics in the game could be designed in such a way that they require 3 people coordinating in order to get by them. MMOs like Blade and Soul do this, where you need everyone doing the right thing simultaneously so that you can beat the challenge you're facing, usually a boss. To that, I have to ask, why 3? If you're going to design any puzzle for the players, there's no need to make it require 3 people specifically. Though I think this argument is vapid. But if someone can see a way to justify this that I haven't considered, please let me know. Another possible argument is for game balance. If the enemies are scaled up for a 3-player party, it could be too difficult to do it with just 2. If so, that's missing the point in my opinion. Souls players do all sorts of crazy challenges in these games. Nothing is going to stop them from finding a way to make it happen. Plus, just create a scaling algorithm for 2 players as well. Better yet, make something that can scale for any number of players. So once again, I don't think this argument has any merit, but I'm open to being proved wrong. Finally, there's the idea that From Software has a specific vision for this game that they believe is best achieved with mandatory 3-player co-op. The Souls games made names for themselves in gaming history for doing things that big games never did. World tendency, invasions, obscure lore, and more. Even if you've seen similar things in older games, From Software executed them in ways that worked for a lot of people, enough to make their games extremely successful. Perhaps these things would have sounded dumb to someone who hasn't experienced them yet, but whether or not you like them yourself, they resonated with enough people to grow the company to what it is today. Maybe the 3-player system will work in the same way. That being said, the only vision I can guess at this point in time, is to encourage people to play with randoms more often, so that they form memories of all the chaos that ensues from getting 3 strangers together to solve a problem. But I also think that's silly because you can still have that happen to people without having to force them into a 3-player session every time. If anyone can think of a good reason to trust From Software's vision on this choice, I'm all ears. Right now, I have to conclude that there's no good reason I can think of to justify a mechanic like this. For such a big franchise and such a big company, the loss of enjoyment from not having 2-player co-op will be massive. Fill the 3rd slot in with an AI if you have to at this point, though I highly doubt that would ever be necessary. I just don't get why in this day and age, we are still getting games with things like unskippable cutscenes and now this weird matchmaking. This is just yet another blunder in my opinion, so I wanted to rant about it in this video. If I could make any call to action, I'd say that this is something worth being vocal about to the developers. I want to believe that as long as you're logical and respectful about it, you can change the game before it has to release with such a huge blunder. You just have to be loud enough about it. As for me, I've said everything I want to say in this video. If they somehow make it work in Night Rain, I'll take back what I said in this video. Otherwise, remember, don't settle for less. If the Sonic movie creators were willing to redesign the main character of their own film, From Software, who nerfed their final DLC boss, should also be willing to enable 2-player co-op. Consumer feedback prior to the release of a product has been more powerful than ever, and we should continue to feed into that power by vocalizing the changes that we want to see. Don't let the flame die out.